Hello, my name is Kate Grachowski, and I lead strategic marketing for the Aviation Collective. We've recently completed a workplace culture survey, and this webinar is designed to give insights into some of the findings of that report. Additionally, I have the pleasure of introducing René Banglesdorf, your presenter for today. René is a longtime aviation professional, an experienced high-performance business coach for leaders in dozens of industries, and an expert in workplace culture as it affects aviation. Under her leadership, Charlie Bravo Aviation closed nearly $1 billion in aircraft sales across more than 40 countries. She has served on the board of the International Aviation Women's Association and on the U.S. Congress Chartered Women in Aviation Advisory Board. Her insights from both strategic and tactical perspectives make her a valuable consultant on aviation workplace culture. And I'm really looking forward to her sharing these insights with you today. We'll send out a copy of the report immediately following this webinar to everyone who stays on the training until the end. So make sure to clear your calendar and silence your distractions. Pull out a notepad and pen, and you can take some notes as we go along. René has some revolutionary ideas about finding balance within your corporate culture, and I know you'll have some good takeaways.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. I appreciate you and the rest of the team more than you know. Y'all make me look and sound good. And hello and welcome to those joining by video here. I don't take lightly that you're giving me an hour of your day. We are all busy, and I'm going to assume that a few of you have experienced some screen fatigue at some point in the last couple of years. All of the changes, including our use of computers to connect, have left even the most stable companies searching for ways to improve, enhance, change, or detoxify their company culture. I'm pretty sure that's why you're here today, so I'm going to dive right in. To set the stage, I want to tell you what I'm envisioning for you. Whether you're a manager, company or nonprofit leader, or a new entrant to the workforce. I believe a strong culture is one where minimal politics and confusion exist, turnover is low among good employees, engagement and productivity are high, and results are consistently good. A culture where safety is so ingrained, the FAA Safety Committee or a safety auditor has nothing to talk about. Sounds dreamy, right? With even some small shifts, we're going to get closer to that with some actions we can begin today. Here's what we're going to cover. I'm going to talk about what culture impacts and what impacts culture. Then I'm going to take this big, sometimes overwhelming and unwieldy topic and pare it down into 4 categories that I call the 4 forces of workplace culture. Some of you, especially those who hold an aeronautical engineering degree or a pilot certificate, may think that sounds familiar, and it is. It's an ode to the 4 forces of flight. We find ourselves on our way to our desired destination when the 4 forces of flight are in balance, and we find ourselves cruising straight and level in company culture when the 4 forces of workplace culture are in sync. My goal is to make it something as natural to remember as how to take off. Then I'm going to talk with you about what you can do now to create culture shifts in your company, no matter where you fall on the org chart, because everyone influences an organization's culture, not just the boss. Let me say that again. Everyone influences an organization's culture, you and everyone around you. Here at the Aviation Collective, we recently conducted a workplace culture survey with participation from more than 350 aviation professionals from every region of the world, with respondents evenly split among managers and employees. I believe there are some trends exposed in this report that will help you in your self-leadership and that of your team. You'll want to stay until the end of this training because we have a bonus for you just for participating today. Not only will you receive a copy of the report, but I'll tell you my top takeaways from the data it reveals. I want to start by examining some of these trends. It is not just you. Employee turnover is high. In fact, so high, the phenomenon has been named the Great Resignation. Engagement is low, even though in aviation, people love their jobs. Mechanics are hard to find. Specifically in the aviation industry, we're losing skilled labor to other industries that don't require 24/7 coverage, expensive tools, or licenses. Case in point, Disney is the top recruiter of newly licensed airframe and power plant technicians. I don't have to tell anyone here that working in a short-staffed environment is not a sustainable proposition. Overstretched employees make mistakes. Overworked bosses are too busy to develop their team, and productivity deteriorates. Incidents or accidents happen. Businesses have catastrophic losses. This unsustainable cycle can be broken, and the secret is in shifts in workplace culture. In a report released earlier this year, analytics company Culture X noted that the biggest predictor of employee attrition isn't pay, but workplace culture. In their analysis of more than 1.4 million Glassdoor reviews across 38 industries, they found poor company culture is 12.4 times more likely than compensation to predict an employee departure. A recent National Bureau of Economic Research study indicated 85% of CEOs and CFOs believe that an unhealthy corporate culture leads to unethical behavior. The same survey of chief executives indicated that 9 out of 10 believe that improving corporate culture would increase their company's value, and more than 3/4 of them ranked culture as among the 5 most important factors driving their company's valuation. The recent Netflix documentary about the Boeing 737 MAX issues, titled Downfall, revealed a shift in Boeing's culture after the merger with McDonnell Douglas, from a relentless safety focus to a shareholder value prioritization. In this industry, as well as in others, what we do, how we shape our culture, can have life or death impact. Values shifts in any direction can have unintended consequences. The bottom line is that culture impacts profitability, productivity, and public perception, and probably a few more measures that don't start with P. But what impacts culture? First is people. The team you hire and their collective personalities, values, skills, diverse experiences, and everyday behaviors make up this living organism we call workplace culture. How they interact with each other on a daily basis impacts everything about the company. Are they collaborative or finger-pointing? Supportive or competitive? Task or team-oriented? My nephew graduated from college a couple of years ago and went to work for a massive financial institution in what he thought would be his dream job. He left after just 18 months for a lower paying job because he felt like every time he had a question, his lack of knowledge was used against him for someone else's gain. This leads me to leadership. The way company leaders communicate and interact with employees has a huge impact on the company's health. What leaders emphasize The stories they tell, what they publicly celebrate and recognize matters, as does their ability to bring a vision to life, rally the team when there's a setback, visually embody the company's values, and earn the trust of employees and stakeholders alike. Similarly, how the organization is managed makes a difference. Clear systems, procedures, hierarchy, controls, and goals help drive an organization forward. If these are also fair, well-vetted, and frequently reviewed, fewer mistakes occur. The degree to which managers empower employees to make decisions and offer feedback also affects morale. Workplace practices play a part in shaping the culture as well, especially as it relates to retention and advancement of employees. This includes how a company recruits, selects, onboards, compensates, recognizes, trains, develops, reviews, and honors the outside commitment of its employees. Our survey showed that employees experience frustration in a lack of clarity in this area. Well, nobody can say there aren't enough policies, procedures, or regulations in aviation. If they do, I'm sure many of us could send a stack of FAA or EASA-issued handbooks. How we apply those operations policies, as well as those issued by any federal Department of Labor, matters. Companies also have employment policies such as attendance requirements, uniform or dress codes, ethics expectations, and zero tolerance policies for certain behaviors. Even more important than the policies themselves are how consistently they're applied and enforced. Are they real policies or just lip service? I touched on this next area of impact earlier, priorities. These are found in the mission, vision, and values of an organization. They are critically important. If you value profit over safety, you may end up with incidents or worse. But if you value safety at the cost of operational efficiency, you may end up out of business. Mission, vision, and values of an organization should be clear enough to build enthusiastic buy-in. They should be almost over-communicated and only changed upon very careful consideration. My most successful coaching clients hire for values. They and their team members can articulate not only what those values are, but what those values look like in practice. And they live them out as much as possible. Overarching all of these impacts is communication. Not surprisingly, a lack of clear expectations, unprofessional verbal and nonverbal communication, inconsistency, and the absence of transparency lead the causes for workplace dissatisfaction. And like I said at the beginning of this training, workplace discord is a 12 times more accurate indicator of churn than dissatisfaction with pay. Since culture is a living, breathing, ever-changing organism, it can always be strengthened. If you're anything like me, figuring out where to begin can be a daunting task when you're already busier than ever and managing more variables than you imagined possible when you were in school. I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here. Most of the aviators on the training here learned to fly a lot younger than I did. You perhaps hadn't driven a car for 500,000 miles before you learned that an airplane is steered on a taxiway with your feet, not your hands. Old habits are hard to unlearn. My poor flight instructor could tell you I was not a quick study. Even though I was awarded a private pilot certificate last year, just 4 weeks after I began my flight training, we spent 95 hours in the Cessna 172 to do it. It was intense. I experienced more frustration than I ever imagined. At times, it was nerve-wracking, like learning short field takeoffs and landings on a short, narrow airfield surrounded by pine trees in the Sierra foothills. Watch this video. It's a little bitty strip with no taxiway, fuel on one side, and airport camping on the other. Doesn't landing workplace culture feel a little like this? Y'all, my palms are sweating just reliving that. And for those of you who are wondering who was filming from the left seat, this was my instructor's landing after I performed it correctly 5 or 6 times. Honest. Whew, that's scary. Being so immersed in flight as I was getting my license is what led me to an understanding that in order for our companies to really soar, our workplace culture must be balanced by the same kind of forces that enable us as mere humans to experience the miracle of flight. I remember having a pilot friend tell me that what makes airplanes fly is money. True, 100% true. But there are also 4 forces necessary for effective flight. Lift is provided by the changing dynamic of the air over the airfoil or wing. It elevates the entire aircraft. Thrust comes from the propulsion in the engine, which is created by the proper combination of fuel, air, and fire. Gravity, or some say weight, is what brings us back down to earth. Weightless flight is aimless at the whim of the wind. And finally, drag. Though technically drag is not necessary for flight, it's a byproduct of having any sort of mass, and it is the control of the drag that directs a flight toward an altitude, a heading, and ultimately a destination. As a passenger, straight and level flight is smooth and easy. But the truth is the pilot, or in some cases, the autopilot, is making constant inputs or adjustments to maintain the ability for people to be about their business and arrive at the agreed upon destination. Are you following me? Yay! Let's look at how this correlates to workplace culture. Lift elevates. So does respect. Respect is defined as due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, or tradition of others. That may mean coworkers, leaders, customers. Respect also extends to the policies or processes at a company. It comes across as listening to others' points of view and explaining our perspective in a non-confrontational manner. It looks like awareness of the toll our requests will make on another person or department's time or resources. Respect as an employee can mean taking the extra time to identify a potential solution or two instead of going to your boss with problems. As a manager, your employees are better equipped to adhere to company policies when the expectations about their performance are clear. My mentor once told me that if we treat our employees like they are volunteers, they feel valued and appreciated. However, he did not say to pay them like volunteers. One of the ways to show respect is by compensating workers well for their value to the company, with both wages and benefits. When respect is not present in an organization, we're on our way to quick escalation or deterioration. If something disrupts the flow of air over the wing, ice, a bird, a gust of wind, heat convections, we must immediately take action to keep the airplane in the air or get it safely to the ground. We cannot always eliminate turbulence, but we can make adjustments. The same is true in our businesses. Respect generally shows up in verbal and nonverbal communication across teams, leadership, policies, priorities, and processes. An abundance of respect creates a strong culture, and its disregard, well, it's disruptive at best. Thrust, or forward momentum, is fueled by resources. And just like a plane can sit on the ramp full of fuel and not be moving, a company can be flush with cash and going nowhere. To create forward momentum, we also need a spark, or a change agent, if you will. In order to burn for a measured period of time, a spark needs a steady flow or mixture of air. When we relate this to company culture, we should see that our organization needs physical resources like mechanical drawings, equipment, and payroll. It also needs some breathing room through the appropriate level of autonomy. We are not robots, after all. And the organization needs a catalyst for something different to happen. Remember the old adage that we don't get somewhere new by trying the same thing over and over again, expecting better results. Resources can be additional staff members to an overextended team. They can be professional development or integrated software systems. They can be budgetary or even the proper amount of time to meet a deadline or deliver a job. Properly resourced teams rarely burn out. And good leaders, like good pilots, monitor the mixture of all these elements to ensure the best effectiveness and efficiency. We are digging deep into middle school science class with this next force. There is no weight without gravity. Likewise, our organizations are unlikely to make a lasting impact without a weightiness or reasons for existence, right? It's what helps us to land at our destination instead of being carried away by changing winds. And boy, have there been a lot of those lately. With the pace of innovation today, everyone younger than us, than either of us, will have more choices than we did when it comes to occupations. I'm in Gen X. As I've aged, I've become more and more focused on the impact I'll leave as my legacy. As with most millennials and Gen Zers, my kids developed a stronger determination to prioritize mission over job. Their generations want to work as part of a bigger purpose, not to move into the corner office and get the 30-year work anniversary Rolex. They also need to know that their role in the company has purpose. And not surprisingly, their job satisfaction rises when they know how that fits into the bigger picture. Companies need the order found in reasons or purpose, kind of like flights do. I know you've been on a flight where during the safety briefing you could tell the flight attendant had to look down and read where the plane was scheduled to go. Just last weekend, I heard, on our way to Austin today, imagine if the pilot didn't know. If she can't articulate to air traffic control the purpose of the flight, she won't get clearance to even take off, at least not in a commercial operation. Reasons matter. Equally important to all the other forces, lift or respect, thrust or resources, and weight or reasons, is the pilot's or leader's control of the airship's direction. This is accomplished through inputs to drag, or in company terms, realignment. Whether you have a strategic plan or a flight plan, unless your operation is completely autonomous, you'll need to make adjustments. Winds or changes may blow you off course. You may need to divert due to changing conditions at your planned destination. Like fog or a pandemic. Something unexpected may happen, like an electrical fire, an engine failure, or a passenger with a medical emergency. For business, a regulatory shift, a disruptive competitor, the loss of a key employee or client. Regular checkpoints, awareness, Accountability and adjustments can avert disasters in our organizations the same way they do in the air. I don't want to get on any sort of political soapbox here, but what if, like pilots, government leaders had to prove they could handle all sorts of different emergencies as a qualification to take the job? But before I point too many fingers, what if as leaders, or even just humans on a planet with other humans, we made regular adjustments? We realigned to continue on the course to the destination we wanted. Trust me, smooth landings don't just happen. They require respect, the proper combination of resources, reasons, or weight, and the proper alignment or realignment in the landing pattern. Sometimes they aren't smooth, even when you have all those forces working together. But some people say any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. Which one of those 4 forces is the area where you see the most growth potential at your organization? Pop your answer into the chat or comments, or DM me and let me know. Trust me, I hear all 4 answers regularly. They are all important. Perhaps the most critical thing we overlook in addressing culture is the fact that all 4 forces need to be in balance. If we focus on respect without keying in on reasons for each person's role as well as the mission of the company, we could be pandering. If we're hyper-vigilant about reasons without respecting the people who make it happen, we deflate creativity and innovation. Likewise, if we pour resources into an effort without directing where we're going, monitoring progress, and realigning how we plan to arrive, we may end up with delays, smaller profits, or undesirable course corrections. Constant change without resources also feels short-sighted. I hope you're saying, I get it, whether you're a pilot or not. Our culture, every culture, needs to have balance to be really effective. It also needs buy-in and positive contributions from everyone involved. That means you. If you know you have some deeper work to do here, I would love to invite you to join me for a half-day workshop, which includes some pretty intense attention to this critical area. An employee culture survey, a deep dive on values, how your policies line up with or hinder your organization's purpose, and practical ways to improve communications. You'll end the workshop with measurable goals and an opportunity to institute accountability for achieving them. You can visit the aviationcollective.com/workshop if you already know this is for you. In the meantime, I promised I would give you some actions you can take today to initiate culture change, no matter where you sit on the org chart. I'd love to know which action you are going to take. If you follow the Aviation Collective on social media, send us a direct message to let us know. Telling someone is a great way to set yourself up for accountability. To build respect, extend an invitation to share a conversation or even a mealtime with someone who isn't just like you. Maybe they're a different age or come from a different background. Maybe they are in a different department. Yes, I've heard marketing and engineering can find a common language if they try. Join an affinity group if your company has those, or start an informal one. At larger organizations, these are formed around everything from gender and faith to hobbies and parenting stages. It provides common ground. I love the icebreaker at conference tables where a very diverse group of people has to present to the larger group some of the traits every person has in common. You can suggest or organize a lunch and learn with someone who has more knowledge than the rest of the team on a particular topic. If that person is open to a Q&A, he or she may also learn something. If you're doing it on Zoom, just make sure you're muted if you're eating potato chips. Another action that goes a long way is asking someone what you can do to make their job easier. Just be sure not to commit to something you can't reasonably perform. Sometimes just asking the question helps. This is just the tip of the iceberg for improving respect where you work, and I'm sure you notice not one of those ideas is out of reach for anyone in the organization. Resources are a little bit of a different story, but if you don't control them, don't assume you're off the hook. I still believe that everyone at an organization influences the culture, and everyone influences the resources. Certainly, everyone has the ability to waste them, especially time, right? Okay, no guilt trips, not going there. Participating in good communication about software systems or potential safety issues is really helpful. Speak up when there's a policy that makes your job harder or is outdated and needs to be changed. Other people on your team may not be aware of the struggle or the resulting new opportunity. If you're in a position to do so, changing policies can be helpful. It can also be disruptive. One way to mitigate this is with the use of experiments. We did this in a company I used to lead when we tried working from home offices for the summer in 2019, before everyone else was forced to work from home. We found, like I'm sure many of you have, that we can be just as productive at home with some adjustments to the way that we work. Creating an environment with some degree of flexibility helps us adjust when there's a change to the resources, right? How about outsourcing complicated software development to get a project over the finish line? Trying a concentrated 6-hour workday when kids are remote learning. All of these actions can be temporary, or as I like to call them, experiments, minor adjustments. And just like we adjust the throttle or air-fuel mixture, we must give and receive feedback for resources to be properly allocated. Reasons are both company-wide and personal. If you're an employee, I think it's really important to get clear about the reason you're at that company. Ask questions if you need to in order to understand your role and what your personal impact is on either the top line contribution or bottom line improvement in the company. You can develop that with your manager or your direct reports, or both, depending on your role in the organization. The importance of reiterating why cannot be understated. People lose their way when they lose their why. In the study we completed, a large percentage of both managers and employees noted that having and setting clear expectations was an aid to good culture. They also said the lack of clear expectations was a major detractor for people loving their job. An overwhelming majority of aviation employees indicated they needed more clarity about their value to the company or how they could meaningfully improve that with a clear advancement path aligned. Managers can set regular check-ins to have candid conversations about this, even outside of formal reviews. Some people call it mentorship, and most people want it. As a leader, you can provide some units of measure to promote fair assessment of people's performance. Do you have transparent key performance indicators? Could you make them more clear or transparent with regular check-ins? In flight, we are constantly monitoring a number of instruments to be assured everything is going smoothly. It's easy to fixate on the one that seems to be deviating the most, only to find that you've drifted in another area. As a leader, you need to develop the scan that informs your realignment decisions. As I mentioned before, I'd like to invite you to join my upcoming workshop to jumpstart some changes to your workplace culture. If you visit the aviationcollective.com/workshop, you can see the dates that it's publicly available. I also have said a few times that everyone influences the culture of an organization, and I know if you're going to affect change, you probably can't do it alone. That's why if you sign up in the next 48 hours to an upcoming workshop, you can bring along 5 coworkers from the same organization for free. The workshop will be interactive. You'll have time for Q&A with me and guided discussions that you can have with your team to make small changes for immediate impact and longer-term goals to arrive at that destination you've envisioned. Here's a little more about the workshop. Both smaller and larger teams can benefit from conducting a workplace culture survey, giving insights into any drift that's happened as our workplaces have had to adapt to unexpected changes over the last 2 years. We'll send you the questions to collect ahead of time. On the day of the workshop, we'll examine how the behaviors of your team underscore or undermine your company values and what you can do to make improvements, even if it's already good. We'll spend some time analyzing how systems, processes, procedures, and common workplace practices might be hindering productivity, safety, innovation, or profitability. As customer needs, working environments, and outside influence shift over time, we need to take a fresh look at how we are accomplishing our most important initiatives, especially in light of how they line up with our values. If policies and practices are where culture shifts gain momentum, communications are where they start. We'll take a hard look at our intentions about communications, what is actually happening, and how to close the gap. I recently realized I had created some drift in my meetings when I quit sticking to an agenda. Or, if we can be really honest with each other, I quit creating an agenda. The little considerations in communications matter, and a meeting agenda is a great way to let team members know you value their time. While I cannot help you change your culture miraculously overnight, I can provide measures to take you in that direction and teach you some steps for better accountability on this critical work. I hope that you and several of your team members will join me on this journey. I recently conducted one of these workshops for a fairly well-known aviation department, and the department head took 2 pages of actionable notes, which he relayed to us at the end of the presentation. It was really powerful. At the beginning of the training, I promised to tell you my biggest takeaways from the workplace culture survey we conducted earlier this year, if you stuck with me till the end. Hopefully, they'll give you insights into ways you can strengthen culture at your company, because everyone in an organization influences its culture. You should receive the full report in your email shortly. In the meantime, here are my top 5 takeaways. More people indicated that good workplace culture is the most important factor in their employment decisions than any other single factor. All generations except Gen Z indicated that being passionate about aviation was a driver for them. The youngest generation in the workforce said they prioritize their individual value or team mission. This is a trend we should pay attention to for the future. This one is heartbreaking to me. Less than 16% of workers believed that poor performance is adequately addressed in their workplace. And by the way, it's always the best performers that are frustrated by the lack of accountability for excellence. The top detractors in workplace culture are lack of a clear advancement path low pay or benefits, and inadequate access to professional development opportunities. Some of those are likely just a communication gap. The biggest gaps in submissions between employees and managers suggest that leaders don't recognize or communicate about individuals' growth potential, or they just aren't invested in their people's success in a meaningful way. This lack of engagement or investment is a human element that can prove incredibly costly to companies with both retention and productivity. All of these findings point to addressable obstacles, and these are exactly what we cover in the Workplace Culture Workshop. Kate, you crunched all the data, so I'll kick this back over to you to see if there's anything that stood out to you in the report findings that I didn't cover. And then if we have time, let's take some questions. If we have questions, let's take them.
So you noted some of the big takeaways there for sure, but some of the other findings that I wanted to point out really were about those gaps between managers and employees. And you talked about the one that really addresses the growth potential, and I'm so glad that you did. I think a really tangible way that we saw from the study too to address that growth potential is through mentorship. And you mentioned mentorship in the training, but managers reported that they were mentoring employees, whether that was formally or informally, but the employees didn't report being mentored by someone either at work or in the industry to the same degree. And so I thought that gap was really interesting, but also a great opportunity for managers, but also employees alike to pursue mentorship in some capacity. You know, if you're a manager and you are mentoring some of your employees, I would encourage you to develop a clear structure around the communication cadence. And, you know, Renee mentioned the agenda of a meeting. Having an agenda for even your mentorship sessions, I think will really demonstrate an intentionality there to develop your employees and to show that you care about their growth potential long term. And if you're an employee and you feel that maybe your manager is spending some time developing you, but you're not really sure if it's mentorship, I think just seek clarification there and ask, you know, clarifying questions if this is something formal or informal, and provide some feedback as to the areas that you really want to be developed and challenged to grow in. Another area in this kind of realm with a big gap being between managers and employees was also that the managers say their teams care about each other. Their team members really care about each other's success and they're invested in one another's success. But employees reported not necessarily agreeing with that as strongly. And so, again, I think that this is really a communication gap more often than a real one. And so, managers, I think you have an opportunity here to demonstrate care and investment through communication, through the pursuit of mentorship. And employees, you know, I think that for you, again, it goes back to communicating with the managers what your expectations are. So those were certainly some of the things that stood out to me as I analyzed the data, specifically those big gaps between managers and employees.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed in my work with the FAA Women in Aviation Advisory Board is that people often don't recognize formal mentorship as being as valuable as informal mentorship. So those relationships that we used to have at the water cooler now need to be a lot more intentional as we're in virtual or hybrid workplaces. It's really important to continue doing those. I'm so pleased that you've been here with us today. I have had a great time talking to you about this. I'd love to get your feedback on what it means to you, what you think you can take away from this. And of course, I'd love to see you on a future workshop. You can sign up for that at theaviationcollective.com/workshops. Thank you.